Listen to me carefully, sweetheart, because what I'm about to tell you I've never said out loud. Not to my daughter, not to my friends, not even to myself. But that night, the night my daughter got married, silence became heavier than truth. It was raining. Not the loud kind of rain that washes everything away. This rain was slow, patient, almost listening. I stood alone in my old house, the one with the cracked wooden floors that complain with every step, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I told myself it was age. I lied. It was fear. My daughter was glowing that day. Her laughter filled the hallway as she got ready, surrounded by voices, perfume, happiness. She looked at me and smiled, and I smiled back. But behind my smile was a locked room. And inside that room was a secret so large it felt alive, like it was breathing behind the door. I waited until everyone left for the ceremony. The house finally went quiet. Too quiet. That's when I walked down the narrow hallway and stopped in front of the door I hadn't opened in years. The key felt cold in my hand, like it didn't belong to me anymore. When I unlocked it, the sound echoed louder than it should have. Click. My heart skipped. I stood there for a moment listening. No voices. No footsteps. Just the rain tapping against the window like fingers. Inside the room, the air smelled old paper, dust, memories that didn't want to be touched. A single candle sat on the small table. I lit it, and the flame trembled the same way I did. Shadows stretched across the walls, long and thin, like they were watching me. Under the table was the metal box. Rusted. Heavy. Unforgiving. I knelt down slowly, my knees aching, and pulled it toward me. As I opened it, something inside me whispered, "Don't." But I did anyway. Inside were documents. Bank papers. Letters. And a diary I had never seen before. My husband's handwriting stared back at me, familiar and strange at the same time. That's when I felt it, the weight of what he left behind. Millions. Not a small inheritance. Not a quiet savings account. A fortune big enough to change bloodlines. Big enough to destroy trust. Big enough to ruin my daughter's future if it came with the wrong truth. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't known. Not while he was alive. Not even when he died. This money had been hidden carefully, deliberately. And now it was mine. I opened the diary with trembling fingers. The pages whispered as they turned. Then I saw the line that froze my soul. If she marries without knowing the truth, forgive yourself. My heart pounded so loudly I thought someone else could hear it. Forgive myself? For what? For staying quiet? For protecting her? Or for being a coward? That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Too close. I blew out the candle instantly. Darkness swallowed the room. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. I felt watched, like the walls themselves knew what I was holding. After a long moment, the sound faded. I don't know if it was real or my fear playing tricks on an old woman's mind. But I knew one thing for sure. I was not alone with this secret anymore. I locked the box, my hands moving faster now, panic guiding me. I hit everything exactly where it was and stepped back into the hallway. The noise returned, laughter, music, life. The wedding car honked outside. My daughter ran to me in her dress, eyes shining, arms open. When she hugged me, I felt her heartbeat against mine. Young, hopeful, innocent. I wanted to tell her everything. I opened my mouth, and then I remembered the diary, and the footsteps, and the money that felt like a curse. So I said nothing. As she pulled away, her smile still warm, I swear I heard a whisper near my ear. She will find out. And in that moment, standing there with rain soaking the world outside and joy filling the house, I realized something terrifying. That secret didn't belong to me anymore. It was waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. The house felt different once my daughter left. Too empty. Too quiet. Every little sound felt louder than it should have been. The ticking clock. The wind brushing against the windows. Even my own breathing sounded like it didn't belong to me. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that whisper in my head. She will find out. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination. An old woman's nerves. But deep down I knew better. Secrets like that don't stay buried. They wait. They listen. And then they move. Sometime after midnight I got up. My feet touched the cold floor. And the wooden boards creaked under my weight. I froze. I stood still listening. No one was there. Still, my heart raced as if I'd been caught doing something wrong. I walked down the hallway again. Slowly. Carefully. The locked room was at the end, just as it always had been. The door looked the same, but it felt aware. Like it knew I was coming back. I checked the lock. Once. Twice. 3 times. Locked. That should have comforted me. It didn't. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so badly I spilled half of it on the counter. As I wiped it up, my eyes drifted to the old family photo hanging on the wall. My husband stood behind us, his hand resting on my shoulder, his smile calm and unreadable. I whispered his name. No answer. You should have told me, I said to the empty room. You should have trusted me. The silence felt like judgment. When I finally went back to bed, sleep came in short, broken pieces. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the metal box. Every time I drifted off, I heard footsteps. Then just before dawn, I woke up suddenly. Something was wrong. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. The air felt heavier, like the house was holding its breath. I listened. That's when I heard it. A soft sound, almost gentle. A floorboard creaking. Not near my room. Down the hallway. I stayed very still. My body felt old and weak in that moment, but my fear was sharp, clear. Someone was walking through my house. Or something. The sound came again. One step. Then another. I slid my feet onto the floor and reached for the lamp, but I didn't turn it on. I didn't want to be seen. I opened my bedroom door just enough to peek out. The hallway was dark. But at the far end, near the locked room, I saw movement. A shadow. Long and thin, stretched across the wall by moonlight. I wanted to scream. I couldn't. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. I leaned against the doorframe to keep myself standing. Who's there? I finally whispered. The shadow didn't answer. It moved. Right as I took a step forward, the sound stopped. The hallway went still again. No footsteps. No movement. Just silence so thick it hurt my ears. I stood there for a long time before I gathered the courage to walk down the hallway. Each step felt like I was walking deeper into something I couldn't escape. When I reached the locked room, my hands were cold. The door was closed. But the lock was turned. Not broken. Not forced. Just unlocked. I stared at it, my mind refusing to understand what my eyes were seeing. I knew I had locked it. I always did. That was the one thing I was careful about. I pushed the door open slowly. The candle on the table was gone. My chest tightened. The metal box was still there, under the table, but the diary was no longer inside it. I dropped to my knees, searching, panic rising with every second. That's when I saw it. The diary was open on the table. A new page lay flat, the ink still dark, like it hadn't been written long ago. I didn't touch it at first. I just stared, my vision blurring with tears. Finally, I forced myself to read the words. Money doesn't just change lives. It exposes them. Protect her. Even from herself. I covered my mouth with my hand. My husband's handwriting was unmistakable. But he was gone. He had been gone for years. So who had opened the room? Who had taken the diary out? And who was making sure I remembered the warning? That morning my daughter called me. Her voice was bright, excited, full of plans and dreams. I listened to her talk about her new home, her new life, her future. I told her I was proud of her. I told her I loved her. I did not tell her that the secret had started moving. And as I hung up the phone, I realized something that made my stomach drop. The money wasn't just hidden anymore. It was watching me. I tried to convince myself it was stress. That old houses make noises. That grief plays tricks on the mind. But no matter how many excuses I whispered to myself, one truth refused to leave me. That diary had moved. And I hadn't touched it. I spent the whole morning cleaning, not because the house was dirty, but because movement made me feel alive. If my hands were busy, maybe my thoughts would slow down. I wiped the same counter 3 times. I rearranged old magazines I never read. Still, my eyes kept drifting toward the hallway. The locked room stayed open. I didn't close it. I couldn't. Closing it felt like pretending nothing was wrong, and something was very wrong. By afternoon, I finally forced myself back inside. The air in that room felt colder than the rest of the house. The diary sat exactly where I had seen it, open to that same page as if it was waiting for me. I sat down slowly, my knees aching, and placed my hand over the paper. For a long moment I didn't read. I just felt the texture of the page. Real. Solid. Not a dream. Why now? I whispered. Why on her wedding night? I turned the page. What I saw next made my breath catch. My husband had written dates, names, places, numbers that didn't make sense at first. Large transfers, accounts I had never heard of, people I didn't recognize. Then I saw one name that stopped me cold. My daughter's husband. I felt dizzy. I had to grab the table to keep from falling. His name appeared only once, written lightly, like my husband hadn't wanted it to stand out. What is this? I whispered, my voice breaking. The room felt smaller. The shadows darker. I flipped through the pages faster now, my fear growing with every line. The money wasn't just sitting in one place. It had been moved, watched, protected, hidden from me. I realized then that my husband hadn't just been keeping a secret from the world. He had been keeping it from me. That night, I dreamed of him standing in the doorway, his face half in shadow. He didn't speak. He just shook his head slowly like he was warning me. When I woke up, my pillow was wet with tears. The next morning, my daughter showed up unannounced. I was standing in the kitchen when I heard her knock. 3 quick taps. My heart jumped into my throat. I hadn't told her to come. She had never just shown up like this before. I opened the door and there she was, smiling, carrying a small bag. I missed you, she said, hugging me tightly. I held her longer than I should have. I breathed her in like I was afraid she might disappear. She felt warm, safe, and suddenly the house felt dangerous again. She sat at the table talking about married life, about her new routines, her plans. I nodded, smiled, responded at the right moments. But my mind kept drifting back to the diary. Had she seen the room? Had she heard something? Had someone followed her here? Then she said something that made my blood run cold. Mom, she said casually, stirring her coffee. Did Dad ever talk to you about investments? I stared at her. Why would you ask that? She shrugged. Just curious. My husband mentioned something about old accounts. He said Dad once gave him advice. Years ago. My heart pounded so hard I thought she could hear it. Did he say anything else? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No, she said. Just that Dad was a very careful, very private, very careful, very private. That was one way to put it. After she left, I went straight to the locked room. My hands were sweating as I opened the diary again. I flipped to the back where the writing was messier, more rushed. There in shaky ink was a sentence that made my stomach twist. If she brings him into the house, the truth will follow. I backed away from the table, my heart racing. My daughter had already brought him into her life. And now, without knowing it, she had brought him closer to the secret I was trying to protect her from. That evening, I stood by the window watching the sun go down, the sky turning the color of old blood. I felt something settle inside me then. This was no longer about money. It was about trust. And someone had already broken it. I didn't know who yet. But I knew one thing for certain. The diary wasn't finished with me. That night, I didn't turn off a single light in the house. Every lamp stayed on. Every shadow was pushed back as far as it could go. Still, I felt watched. Not from outside, but from within the walls, the floors, the memories that knew this house better than I ever had. I sat in my armchair with the diary in my lap, reading the same pages again and again, hoping the words would change. They didn't. The ink stayed firm. The warnings stayed cruel. My husband had planned this. Not just the money, the silence, the timing, even my fear. I remembered something then, something I had buried so deep I had almost convinced myself it never happened. Years ago, long before he got sick, I had asked him a simple question. We were standing in this same living room, the TV playing softly, life still normal. Why do you keep so many things locked? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment. Too long. Then he smiled and said, some doors aren't meant for family. I laughed back then. I wasn't laughing now. Near midnight, the phone rang. I jumped so hard I nearly dropped the diary. My heart pounded as I picked it up, my fingers clumsy. Hello. There was breathing on the other end. Slow. Heavy. Who is this? I whispered. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, my pulse racing. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't a wrong number. That was someone making sure I was awake. I went back to the locked room. The diary was thinner than it should have been. Pages were missing. I flipped through it in panic, my hands moving faster, my chest tight. Several pages had been carefully torn out, not ripped, removed with patience. And I knew exactly who had the patience to do that. My daughter's husband. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, trying to breathe. Memories rushed back. Small things I had ignored. The way he asked questions. The way he listened too closely. The way he once lingered near my husband's study, pretending to admire the books. That night I made a decision I never thought I would make. I followed him. The next afternoon, I told my daughter I needed groceries. I drove instead to their neighborhood and parked across the street. I felt ridiculous, an old woman spying like a child. But fear has a way of stripping dignity away. An hour passed. Then two. Finally he came out alone. I watched him get into his car and drive away. I waited a few seconds, then followed. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. He didn't go to work. He went to an old office building on the edge of town. The kind with no sign and too many locked doors. I parked far away and watched him disappear inside. I sat there for a long time. Then I did something reckless. I went in too. The hallway smelled like dust and old paper. A man at the front desk barely looked up as I walked past. Down the hall, one door was slightly open. Light spilled out. I recognized his voice. "She doesn't know everything yet," he was saying. I froze. Another voice answered. Older. Colder. "She doesn't need to. Not until it's secure." And the mother? There was a pause. "She's just a guardian. Guardians get tired." My knees nearly gave out. They were talking about me. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I walked out like I belonged there, like I hadn't just heard my life reduced to a role. That evening my daughter called me again. She sounded happy, safe, unaware. I almost told her everything. But then I remembered the diary, the missing pages, the warning. If she knows too soon, it will take her husband first. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't about inheritance. It was about control. And my silence, my terrible aching silence, was the only thing standing between my daughter and a truth that could shatter her life. I hung up the phone and locked every door in my house. Because now I knew. The footsteps weren't a memory. They were a countdown. I barely slept after that. Every time my eyes closed, I saw that hallway. I heard his voice again, calm and confident, talking about me like I was already fading. A guardian gets tired. That sentence wrapped itself around my chest and squeezed. By morning I knew what I had to do. I couldn't protect my daughter with silence anymore. Not completely. But I also couldn't hand her the truth all at once. Some truths don't free you. They break you. So I went back to the locked room. Sunlight crept through the small window, cutting across the floor like a blade. The room looked harmless in the daylight. Ordinary. That almost made it worse. Evil never looks the way you expect it to. I sat at the table and spread out everything I had left. The diary. The documents. The letters written in my husband's careful handwriting. I compared them page by page, line by line, searching for patterns, for meaning. That's when I noticed something I had missed before. Numbers repeated. Not bank numbers. Not dates. Addresses. My hands went cold. One address was circled lightly in pencil, as if my husband wasn't sure he should mark it at all. I stared at it for a long time before I realized why it felt familiar. It was my old house. Not this one. The one we lived in before my daughter turned 10. I hadn't thought about that place in years. We left suddenly back then. No explanation. My husband told me it was for work. A better opportunity. I believed him because believing was easier than asking questions I didn't want answered. I grabbed my coat. The drive felt longer than it was. My heart beat faster with every mile, like it already knew what was waiting for me. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered. Older. The house still stood there, quiet, worn down, forgotten. I parked across the street and just sat for a moment. Then I went inside. The door was unlocked. That alone told me everything. Dust covered the furniture. The air smelled stale, heavy with things left behind. My footsteps echoed softly as I walked through rooms that once held my daughter's laughter. In the back bedroom I stopped. The floorboards were new. Not all of them. Just one section. Poorly replaced. Carelessly done. I knelt down and pressed my hand against the wood. Felt wrong. Too smooth. Too clean. My heart pounded as I pried it up. Underneath was a small metal box. Smaller than the one in my current house. Lighter. And empty. Except for one thing. A photograph. It showed my husband standing next to a man I didn't recognize. Both of them were smiling. Too casually. On the back, written in faded ink, were 3 words. We took it. I dropped the photo like it burned. Took what? I didn't have to wonder long. Behind me the floor creaked. I turned slowly. He stood in the doorway. My daughter's husband. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't guilty. It was calm. Respectful even. Like he had been expecting me. You weren't supposed to come here, he said gently. My voice shook. You followed me. No, he replied. I watched you. There's a difference. My legs felt weak but I stayed standing. What did you take? He sighed as if tired of pretending. Not money at first. Information. Leverage. The money came later. You're using my daughter, I whispered. He shook his head. I'm protecting what belongs to us. Us. My voice cracked. He stepped aside, letting me see the empty house behind him. Your husband and I started something years ago. Something big. Something dangerous. When he died, you inherited more than money. You inherited responsibility. I never agreed to that. He smiled sadly. Neither did I. But here we are. Tears burned my eyes. If you hurt her. I won't, he said quickly. Not unless the truth comes out the wrong way. There it was. The threat hidden inside kindness. When I returned home that evening, I locked the door and collapsed into my chair. My body felt older than it ever had. Tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. I opened the diary one last time. At the very back, barely visible, was a line I had never seen before. If she reads this, it means I failed. Trust her. She is stronger than you think. For the first time since my daughter's wedding, I cried without holding back. Because now I knew the worst truth of all. My husband hadn't been protecting my daughter. He had been preparing her. And I had been standing in the way. By the time the sun came up, I had made my decision. Not because I was brave. Because I was out of time. My body felt heavy as I moved through the house, gathering what mattered and leaving the rest behind. I packed the diary, the remaining documents, the photograph. I even packed a letter. One I wrote with shaking hands, rewriting it 3 times until the words finally stopped lying. I addressed it to my daughter. I didn't seal it. If she was meant to read it, I wanted her to choose. Before I left, I stood in the hallway and looked at the locked room one last time. I didn't lock it again. I opened the door wide. Some things lose power when you stop hiding them. The drive to my daughter's house felt unreal. Like I was watching my life from a distance. Traffic moved. People laughed on sidewalks. No one knew that a family was about to break apart or be reborn. From the outside, the world never changes when the truth is coming. When I arrived, her car was there. So was his. My heart tightened, but I walked inside anyway. They were in the kitchen, standing close, laughing softly. For a moment, I almost turned around and left. Almost chose ignorance again. But then my daughter saw me and smiled. That smile broke me. I sat them down at the table. My hands shook as I placed the diary between us. The room went quiet. Even he looked alert now, his calm slipping just slightly. There are things you need to know, I said. My daughter frowned. Mom, what's wrong? I looked at her husband. You already know. His jaw tightened. He didn't deny it. I turned the diary toward my daughter. Your father left this for me. And for you. I thought I was protecting you by staying silent. I was wrong. She reached for the diary slowly, like it might disappear. What is this? The truth, I whispered. And a warning. He stood up. This isn't the right time. I looked up at him. There was never going to be a right time. She opened the diary. As she read, her face changed. Confusion, shock, hurt, and then something worse, recognition. You knew, she said to her husband, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't answer. She looked at me, tears in her eyes. You knew too. Yes, I said. And I'm sorry. The silence that followed felt endless. Finally, she closed the diary and stood up. Her hands were steady now. Strong. Nothing like mine. Both of you made choices for me, she said. You don't get to do that anymore. He tried to speak. She raised her hand. Stop. I had never seen her like that. Calm. Clear. Unafraid. She turned to me. Mom, I need you to trust me now. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. That night, I slept in her guest room. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. No footsteps. No whispers. No shadows. In the morning, her husband was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just absence. She sat with me on the porch as the sun rose, holding my hand the way I used to hold hers when she was small. You should have told me sooner, she said softly. I know, I replied. But I'm glad you told me at all. I thought it was over. I was wrong. When I returned home later that day, my front door was open. The diary was gone. And on the table where it used to be, there was a single note written in unfamiliar handwriting. This isn't finished. My legs gave out beneath me, because I finally understood. The inheritance wasn't $7 million. It was a war. I sat there for a long time staring at that note. This isn't finished. The house was silent again, but it wasn't empty the way it used to be. It felt disturbed, like something had been searching through my life and left its fingerprints behind. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt tired in a way that settled deep into my bones. I locked the door, even though I knew it didn't matter anymore. I made tea and let it go cold on the table. My hands were steady now. Fear had burned itself out. What was left was clarity. That night I called my daughter. I think he took the diary, I said. There was a pause on the other end. Not shock. Not panic. Understanding. I know, she said quietly. He left a message for me too. My heart tightened. What did it say? That he was going to finish what Dad started. With or without us. I closed my eyes. Then your father failed. No, she said firmly. He didn't. He left it with the wrong person. The next morning we met at a small office downtown. Neutral ground. Bright windows. No shadows to hide in. My daughter insisted I sit beside her, not behind her. For the first time I wasn't the guardian. I was the witness. He walked in late like he always did. Calm. Polite. Smiling like this was just another conversation he could control. He looked at me first. You should have stayed quiet. I didn't answer. My daughter did. You built your plan around the idea that my mother was weak, she said. And that I was naive. He sighed. I built it around survival. She slid a folder across the table. Copies of documents. Account trails. Names. Dates. Everything he thought only he knew. His smile faded. I read the diary, she continued. All of it. Dad didn't hide the money to protect you. He hid it to expose you. Slowly. Safely. When the time was right. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. You think this ends here? She met his eyes without flinching. It already has. She stood up. I stood with her. Leave, she said. If you don't, the next people you speak to won't be family. He looked at me, then really looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. You taught her well, he said. I shook my head. No. I finally stopped underestimating her. He left without another word. Weeks passed. The money was secured, frozen, untouchable. Investigation started quietly. People asked questions they should have asked years ago. Doors opened that had been locked for too long. My daughter filed for divorce. We moved slowly after that. Healing doesn't rush. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. But something had changed between us. There were no more locked rooms. No more whispered warnings. One evening, as we sat together going through old photos, she held one up and smiled sadly. He was wrong about one thing, she said. What's that? I asked. That you were protecting me from the truth. I looked at her confused. She reached for my hand. You were protecting yourself from losing me. And I understand that now. Tears filled my eyes. Not from fear this time. From relief. I never told her how much the inheritance was. I never needed to. Because in the end, the real inheritance wasn't money. It was courage. It was knowing when to stop being silent. It was learning that love doesn't mean hiding the truth. It means trusting the people you love to survive it. So if you're listening to me right now, let me ask you something. What are you protecting with your silence? And who are you protecting it from? Because sometimes the most dangerous secret isn't the one you hide from others. It's the one you hide from yourself.